Hello, welcome back. I'm with Matt Halliday, the COO of Canada's Silver Cobalt. Matt, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Peter.
For those less familiar, tell us a little bit about the company.
Canada Silver Cobalt has a lot of high-grade silver and cobalt byproduct at our properties in the cobalt mining camp. We also have a small mill in the town of Cobalt, and we're getting that mill ready to be able to process the silver when we're getting down to the Castle East project. We have EV Auto project. It's a gold project 5 kilometers southwest of Macassa mine in Kirkland Lake area. And we have a large number of nickel, copper, cobalt properties across Quebec, which is the subject of an upcoming spin-out.
Brilliant. Before we go into the projects and the mill and sort of what the potential is, can you just inform investors of your capital structure, so market cap, cash in the bank, burn rate, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we have a capital, our market cap is around 20 million Canadian right now. We have about 200 million shares outstanding. We are drilling right now, so the burn is high, but we have probably around 150 per month is a typical burn rate, sitting at around just under $1 million right now.
Brilliant. Okay, so Castle East, or that's where the mill is adjacent to.
No, the mill is in the town of Cobalt, very close to our past producing beaver mine, as well as our violet mine. It's kind of a very centralized location, and our Castle East is in Gauganda, about 100 kilometers away.
All right, well, let's talk about Castle East to begin with. Very, very high-grade silver. Can you give us a little bit, geologically, what are we looking at here in the ground?
Sure. So the Castle East is hosted in what is called the Nipissing diabase. So we have a diabase sill, kind of forms the base of what's called the Miller Lake Basin. It's structurally hosted in narrow veins, so very high grade silver, some of the highest grades in the world. We hit up to almost 89,000 grams per ton silver over 0.3 meters. These fault structures have been reactivated from the basement, the Archean, and basically we can find the silver through those reactivation areas in the Archean, in the Nipissing itself, and in the Huronian sediments. The Nipissing diabase is thought to be the heat source, and the reason why we have such extremely high silver grades is that they believe that there was a mixing of high salinity brines through the dewatering of the Huronian with a low salinity brine and a very fast deposition of silver, and that gave these extremely interesting textures and extremely high grade silver deposition.
And I want to get it around my head, really, the scale of this deposit, or what you think it might be, because obviously it's narrow vein. Mm-hmm. How many veins are we talking about that you've found so far? In what proximity? What's the width of the veins?
So the typical vein widths in the cobalt mining camp are between about 3 and 5 inches. They can go up to 12 plus inches, and they can be as small as an inch, and people would still mine them if they had that high grade silver. So a small vein of an inch would probably be solid silver, but when you have solid silver, you mine it. Yeah. The size of the deposits, typically the deposits ranged between about 10 and 100 million ounces. But, given the historical perspective, that doesn't really mean a lot in today's context, because some of these mines were one claim. And, they mined 3 million ounces from one claim, whereas, today a mine could be hundreds to thousands of claims, right? So it's a little bit different in that context. Where we are in Castle East, we're adjacent to a bunch of past producing mines, and they produced about 60 million ounces of silver. And where our land package kind of resides is to the east, a little bit deeper into that basin. Maybe we have the next 60 to 100 million ounces of silver there. Time will tell.
And what sort of depth are we looking at here in terms of when the mineralogy starts of the silver, and sort of how far down have you gone and tested? Okay,
that is changed today. We just put out a press release today, and so I'm very excited about this press release. Our target mineralization is 400-ish meters deep. That's where we've been finding most of what we call vein number 1, or the Robinson vein number 2, the big silver vein. And we have seen some shallower, up to about 250 meters depth in the Archean. Most recently, our last intercept was 50 meters depth, also in the Archean. So going back to a little bit of that historic information, 95% of the mining in that little area in the Miller Lake Basin took place in the Nipissing Diabase, and that's where we're targeting. But on the camp abroad, you can find that mineralization in any of those 3 major lithological hosts, because it is structurally controlled and the veins open up where you can have reactivated faults or maybe even new faults. So we're really excited that the newest vein is now only 50 meters deep. We don't have a lot of data, but it hit almost 5,000 grams per ton silver.
Amazing. Okay. Continuation of high grade. Well, let's look on the cobalt side. Have you done any analysis on, say, parts per million on average of sort of the veins that you are looking at?
Yeah, so the cobalt, it varies quite a bit. We have cobalt-rich veins that have very little silver, and they don't have as much interest to me right now until we actually get into a mining activities, because those will need to be evaluated on marginal cost, but they don't have the silver to really pay the bills. And so they can run anywhere between 1 and a few percent cobalt. Some of the silver veins can be as low as in the 0.1 to 0.5% cobalt range. And in our big silver vein, we've had up to 2.2% cobalt in the first round of drilling at the big silver. So we've seen some pretty nice cobalt grades. They range based on vein to vein. But in that kind of 0.5 up to 2% range.
Okay, and just as we're still on the Castle area, what's the next steps for this at the moment? Are you still drilling there, or are you planning to release a resource anytime soon? What's the plan of action? What's the next steps?
Well, the next step is getting back all of our drill data. And so as we've just released a press release today with recent results of silver only 50 meters deep, we need to basically wait until that database is full. And I hope that won't take much longer. It's taken longer than I would have liked it to take, but we're subject to the lab's mercy. No. But the next step after we have a full database is a good structural model. We've already been working on it. We have 3D models of the deposit. And then we need to get a new mineral resource update. And following the resource update, we want to go for a PFS. And that PFS will lead us into completing our permit applications. So we have an environmental baseline study well underway. But we need some of that engineering data to inform the environmental study so we can actually get the permitting phase moving.
So all going well, when could we potentially see this permitting start moving and the PFS?
Well, I hope that the PFS would be available by mid next year. We'll have to see how long it takes for all the assays to come in and the modeling. So that's my rough guideline is mid next year we should have that PFS, and then you would see the permitting taking about 18 months.
Very good. Yeah. Okay, let's move to the mill, because this potentially is a source of cash flow at a faster pace, or potentially. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the deposit nearby?
Yeah, so the mill, we purchased this mill in 2020, and we've evaluated it in 2019. We produced 3 silver bars as proof of concept, and the mill's functional. We've upgraded the mill. It has a ball mill, a cone crusher, and we inserted a gravity circuit, so we have a Falcon concentrator, and there's also a bullion furnace. In addition to the mill, there's an analytical laboratory with fire assay furnaces and a wet lab, so we can attempt to commercialize both sides. I would like to get into toll milling for the meantime before we get to production at the Castle East, and I would like to get the analytical lab set up as a third-party independent operating lab to service the region.
So the mill at the moment, so that you could potentially be getting concentrate from other mines in the region to be processed at the mill whilst Castle East is ongoing, and then is the ultimate plan to then process on site next to Castle East and then ship that concentrate to the mill 100 kilometers away, is that?
So yeah, basically the Castle East is, we want to upgrade at the Castle East and make sure that we have the ability to produce a very high grade con, and then we'll ship that to the mill in Cobalt. In the long term, we'll probably want to build a larger mill in the future, but that is much further down the road. My vision is really to get a large number of these deposits going and feed a centralized mill and centralized leach plant.
But I guess as a junior company trying to reduce costs, that's not a bad way to start, right?
It's excellent, especially since this deposit, with the amount of ore that we'll actually need to process, the tonnage is very low
for
the
such
amount
high
of
grade
ounces. Yeah. So we don't need to process a lot of tons per day.
Well, obviously both of those are very exciting, but they're also working on a spin-out of Grawl. Could you tell us a little bit about that deposit to begin with, and then maybe we can run into the spin-out and why you think that's a good option?
Yeah, the spin-out and the Grawl deposit, it's a magmatic sulfide deposit. What we were looking for was a large Bouguer anomaly and nickel showings and things like that. And we found a very large Bouguer anomaly with nickel showings, and there's a big 6-kilometer EM conductor with historic drilling. So we've claim staked a lot of this package. We filled it in with a couple of option agreements. We have over 6,000 hectares at the Grawl, and we believe that it's a very deep-seated magmatic deposit. We're thinking it goes 1 to 2 kilometers deep. However, where we've currently been drilling, we're drilling around 1 to 200 meters deep, and we've been hitting some pretty nice lenses of sulfide.
So I'm assuming the spin-out, it's very expensive to do this deep drilling. I assume the spin-out will be a separate vehicle just for the nickel sulfide, and you can hopefully raise a bit of cash alongside that to really test this deposit out. Is that the idea?
I don't think it's critical right now that we go and punch the deep hole. I really think that at this phase at the Grawl, let's continue with the surface mineralization that we know about. Yep. Let's build a resource there. I want to see a fresh management team and a fresh team on the ground to be able to put that into a nice resource, and then we can worry about the deeper seated stuff in the future. We already have something that's great, and we keep hitting the massive sulfides and the semi-massive sulfides, so let's keep doing that.
What's the timeline for the spin-out, and will work continue on the asset in the interim until it is spun out, or are you waiting now for the spin-out to then carry on work on the project?
Well, I think that depends on timing. Right now, we're not really doing a lot of work at the Grawl. We did finish up a big summer program, and we'll have a lot of results coming out for the Grawl. We are hoping for the spin-out to happen by the end of the year or first quarter next year. So if that timeline sticks true, then we probably won't be doing a lot at the Grawl until after the spin-out. If that timeline doesn't stick true, then I have to make sure that the CCW's projects advance.
Of course. And has the company given any guidance as to what the spin-out could look like in terms of what CCW holds of the company and really how that's going to work?
Yeah, we had a press release last month. I can't remember the exact date, but I would recommend people take a look at that press release. It does outline basically how we envisioned it at that time. I don't know if it's going to be dramatically different, but share price changes and things will have changed slightly in time. But that should be a pretty good indication of how it's going to go.
Stepping away from Grawl, you obviously have another asset, which is Re2Ox. Can you just give us a little bit of a flavour of what's going on there as well?
Absolutely. So the Re2Ox process is a hydrometallurgical process that can produce cobalt sulfate for the EV market. The intention of Canada Silver Cobalt is to eventually capitalize and market the Re2Ox process. And our first step would be to get it here in the cobalt mining camp and then eventually abroad. And it has a platform ability to produce a lot of materials for the EV market, including the cobalt sulfate, nickel sulfate, copper sulfate, as well as rubidium carbonate, which is often used in electrolyte. So it is a very robust process, and we are also looking into producing an arsenic product. Recently, the Americans have mentioned that semiconductors are very important on their critical metals list, as well as for the defense. So arsenic is used in critical metals, and we'll evaluate the ability to be able to produce a product for them in the right format with Re2Ox.
With this processing technique, are you able to IP it or get a patent on it? Is this something that the company could potentially use as their own intellectual property?
We're continuing to keep it a proprietary process right now.
Okay, very good. I guess something that we've been asking a lot of people at this conference, looking back over the last 12 months, what are you most proud of in terms of the achievements of the company?
Over the last 12 months, I'm extremely proud of my team for all of the technical work that they've done. You know, we've went to the EB Auto property, and we have done all the legwork to get it ready to be drilled. Castle East, you know, we've been working very hard at Castle East for a long time. We're getting the results of that back. You know, a silver intercept at 50 meters depth, that's great. You know, my team has been working extremely hard. I think really I'm so proud of the geologists and the geotechnicians for all the work that they've done, because, you know, we can continually deliver results to the market based on their hard efforts.
Good. And I guess looking forward to the next 12 months, we have touched on some of it with the PFS and some of the other results that are due, but give us a bit of a summary of what material milestones should investors really be looking out for, and when will we be expecting these?
Right. So in the early part of next year, you know, we'll really start seeing the Grawl results continuing. We'll start seeing the EB Auto results. So we'll have data from the ground, from the drill bit, being disseminated to the market. Of course, there's the spin out. I think that the spin out is going to be a very big piece, and the next steps after that, you know, I'm working hard now at trying to get our tailings up and running. So we have the Beaver and the Castle tailings. I'm putting in project definitions into the government right now. So hopefully we'll see those projects advancing in advance of the Castle East. They're simpler projects to maneuver. And there'll be, of course, all the technical reports that are coming out from the Castle East up to mid-year next year.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.